There was a time in your life when you were told to sit down, be quiet, and follow the rules. And you did. Not because you agreed, not because you understood, but because you were too small to question it, too fragile to rebel, too dependent on the very people who built the cage. But here's the thing they never told you. The cage was never about protection. It was about control. You weren't being nurtured. You were being shaped into something manageable, predictable, safe for them. And now you're older, wiser, bigger. And the life that was once handed to you like a pre-written script, it doesn't fit anymore. You've outgrown the role, the costume, the entire damn stage. But instead of walking off, you're still trying to make it work, still cramming your soul into spaces that no longer hold you. Why? Maybe because deep down you still think you're that small child, afraid, unsure, powerless. Maybe because the people who taught you how to be small also taught you to be afraid of anything more. But you're not small anymore. You just haven't realized it yet. Let's talk about it. When you were a child, the world seemed enormous. You looked up to the adults around you and assumed they knew what they were doing, that their way was the only way, that obedience would be rewarded and questioning would lead to punishment. That was never truth. That was conditioning. And conditioning, unlike truth, doesn't care if it hurts you, only if it keeps you in line. From the very beginning, you were surrounded by systems, family structures, school hierarchies, cultural expectations that didn't ask who you were but told you what to be. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't cry too loud. Don't dream too big. And you listened. Of course you did. Your survival depended on it. But here's what's wild. Those systems were built to contain a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. They were built for your undeveloped mind, your unformed sense of self. They were built to fit a person who hadn't yet discovered who they are. But now, you're expanding, growing, evolving, and you're bumping up against the walls of that old structure, feeling trapped, suffocated, restless. Not because something's wrong with you, but because everything's finally starting to go right. You're not broken, you're blooming. But the bloom is painful. That's something people forget to mention. Growth isn't this graceful, Instagrammable process. It's messy, chaotic. It requires the death of what you used to be. And death feels like failure when no one teaches you how to mourn your old self. Maybe you've noticed the signs. The job you once wanted now feels like a cage. The people you used to admire now bore or exhaust you. The routines that once gave you comfort now feel like rituals of repression. You're not imagining it. You're waking up. There's a term in psychology called cognitive dissonance. It's what happens when your current reality no longer aligns with your inner truth. It creates discomfort, friction, the sense that something is off, even if everything looks fine. That dissonance is your soul whispering, "You don't belong here anymore." And if you ignore it long enough, it starts to scream. Let's go deeper. Consider the metaphor of a hermit crab. As it grows, it must leave its old shell and find a new one. But during that transition, it's vulnerable, exposed, at risk. That's where you are now, between shells. And most people, when they feel that exposure, they panic. They run back into the old shell, even if it's too small, even if it hurts, because it's familiar, because it feels safer to be cramped than to be free and afraid. But what if your fear isn't a warning? What if it's a signal? A sign that you're finally stepping into a reality that matches your potential. Throughout history, the people who changed the world, the revolutionaries, the thinkers, the artists, the truth-tellers, they all had one thing in common. They walked away from the life they were told to live. They burned the script, rejected the roles, and wrote their own. Think of Galileo, condemned for saying the earth revolved around the sun. Think of Nina Simone, who turned her music into rebellion. Think of Malcolm X, who transformed his pain into purpose. They didn't fit in. They outgrew the world they were born into, and they didn't shrink back to make others comfortable. They chose expansion over acceptance, and that's what you're being called to do. But it comes with a cost. The people around you might not understand. They might say you've changed, that you're not the same anymore. They're right. You're not. Because growing means grieving. You grieve the version of you who played along, who made herself small to be loved, who silenced his truth to keep the peace. But peace built on self-abandonment is just quiet suffering, and you're done suffering. You might even feel guilty, that's normal. Because we were taught that choosing ourselves is selfish, that saying no is disrespectful, that leaving behind relationships or traditions is betrayal. But betrayal of the self is the greatest sin of all. You owe it to your future to disappoint a few people in your past. This isn't rebellion for the sake of rebellion. This is about remembering who you were before they told you who to be. It's about reclaiming your original self, the one who wasn't afraid to imagine, to ask, to want more. The one who wasn't ashamed of needing space. We talk a lot about growth, but we rarely talk about what it requires. It requires walking away from comfort. It requires the loneliness of becoming someone others no longer recognize. It requires the courage to say, this version of life was built to contain me, not to elevate me. And then tearing it down, brick by brick. You weren't born to be small. You weren't meant to live a life that only scratches the surface of your potential. You were meant to stretch, to push against the edges of what's familiar until you break through into what's possible. And yes, it will be terrifying. But the fear isn't proof that you're on the wrong path. It's proof that you're leaving the path that was chosen for you and walking your own. There will be moments when you question yourself, when you long for the numbness of your old life, when you miss the validation that came from fitting in. But don't confuse validation with value. You were valuable before they saw you, and you'll still be valuable after they forget you. Let go of the life you've outgrown. Stop trying to make peace with a version of yourself that no longer fits. Mourn it, thank it, and move on. Because what's waiting for you on the other side of this discomfort is real freedom. Not the kind they promise you if you obey, but the kind you build yourself from the ashes of everything they told you to be. This is your invitation. To be misunderstood, to be lonely, to be liberated, to be fully unapologetically alive. So, what are you still doing in that cage? Break the lock, burn the map, and become who you were before the world got in the way. If this message stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, but more importantly, take a breath and ask yourself, whose life am I really living? And if the answer isn't mine, then maybe it's time to start.